Hello, everyone. We have Paul Kempisty on the podcast. He is such an amazing acupuncturist and herbalist. For those of you that have taken the herbs that I recommended, if you're a past client, I recommend getting your herbs from PK's, and that is his herbalist company. He's also an acupuncturist, has his own acupuncture clinic in New York City. He is, like I said, the partner of my acupuncturist, Jackie, who is just fucking amazing. They are both the most incredible acupuncturists I've ever come across. They take a very intense in a good way approach, like 100 needles in you at once. You feel so different leaving the room. They're very, very talented, very intuitive, both of them, and just have been doing it for a really long time. And you can really tell that they are experts at what they do. So many of you guys ask me questions all the time about is acupuncture good? Why do I go to acupuncture? What are the benefits of acupuncture? And I was like, you know what? It's about time we have a podcast episode on acupuncture for you guys to be able to learn about it, because I am such an advocate of getting acupuncture, and not just when you need it, but getting it as maintenance, getting it proactively. I go to acupuncture now once every 2 weeks. I'm pretty religious about it. And it has helped me to not have to go to acupuncture, if that makes sense. I take a very proactive approach so that I'm not getting sick. So I'm not feeling under the weather. So I'm not feeling unwell. So I'm not burning myself out. I'm really always working on keeping my body at, in this place and at this kind of state of homeostasis. And I have felt the difference in going to acupuncture very frequently. I know some of you also are going to want to know, how do you tell a good acupuncturist from a not good acupuncturist? Because I've also talked about that of there is a difference. So we talk about that towards the end of the episode as well. We talk about how acupuncture, what acupuncture actually is, how it works, the mechanics of actually how it works. So if you don't understand how it works, or if you're skeptical about it, that'll be really good. We talk about how it helps women's hormones, and it helps with fertility and IVF, not even just fertility and IVF, but also fertility in terms of falling pregnant naturally. We also talk about how it helps men as well, because so many of us think that it's, just a woman's thing. Not very many men go to acupuncture, and I've gotten my husband onto acupuncture. He loves Jackie. Going to Jackie is what got him into acupuncture. He doesn't go as regularly in Atlanta. But he has his own therapist that he goes to for his body work and stuff. So each to their own. But my point is that I think this is going to be a great episode for you guys to just open your mind, especially if you're curious of other modalities to creating health versus just going to the doctor or just seeing Western medicine as the only avenue for health, because truly Western medicine does not always create health. Western medicine is there for a very important reason, and I am super grateful of it. It saved my life a few times. It saved my leg during my ski accident, and I've relied on it in many times during my life. It was what allowed me to have jaw surgery, and for those of you that don't know, I had 6 adult teeth missing. So I had to have a lot of I had to have a lot of teeth removed. I had receding teeth. I've had a lot of teeth issues for those of you that don't know in my life, a lot. And if it wasn't for Western medicine, then I wouldn't have the teeth that I have now. And teeth are also a really important part of our health, and having teeth that are, sinking down into your gums is not healthy. So it's not that we just need to be healthy for, aesthetic purposes. It's also about being healthy because of the flow on effect of having health in our body. So let's dive in. It is so good. He's also so funny, and he's Australian. So you'll love our accents together. And we'll put his links below as well, so you guys can check him out. Give him a follow. As usual, please share the episode, tag me, Monica Yates Health. You can also tag his account, which is I Love Acupuncture. We'll link that below as well. And if you haven't left a review on the podcast, we'd be super grateful if you did. All you have to do is just go on iTunes, leave a written review, send us a screenshot, and we'll send you a little gift in return as well, because I'm always really grateful for those of you that have taken the extra 30 seconds to quickly write that. And without further ado, let's jump into the episode. And a quick FYI that unfortunately Paul's audio quality wasn't too great. And so you might notice that it could be a little bit to listen to in the beginning, but it's only going to last for the first minute, and then your ears are going to get used to it and normalize it, and then it will be fine. I just want to give you that heads up, because what he talks about is so profound in this episode, and I don't want anyone to turn it off because the quality isn't great. Let's just remember that he is an acupuncturist, not a podcaster. So for him, like, he doesn't normally do podcasts. So when he did this podcast, it meant that he carved out an hour from his sessions, which he's very, very full. So that's a lot for him. He carved out the hour, and he doesn't have all the equipment that somebody else would have that's like ready to do podcast interviews. So just know that you're getting the juiciest content from him, and it doesn't really matter that much about the audio quality. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a really special guest on the podcast. And I know Paul because he is my amazing New York City acupuncturist I talk about all the time. He is her, he is her boyfriend. He's their partners, romantic partners. But I feel like you guys are also like work partners because you're both acupuncturists. You're both just like vibing on the amazing work that you do. Paul, can you please introduce yourself, how you got into acupuncture and herbalism work, and just kind of like, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Monica, thanks for having me on. So good to see you. Yeah. You want the short answer or the medium or the long answer?
I want the medium answer.
Okay. So I'm an acupuncturist and a herbalist. I've been practicing for 20 years. When I grew up in Australia, shout out to our...
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So I thought I'd be a doctor or a dentist or something like nerdy like that. Love maths, love science, went to a nerdy high school, and came to America at the end of 11th grade and became a hippie instead. And just kind of like, like every non-American teenager's dream come true is coming to the United States and seeing it all firsthand. And so I kind of like took a little time to figure out what I wanted to do. I got into Eastern stuff. I got into herbs. I got into meditation. And at some point I, wanted to learn more about herbs, and I didn't want to be like some dude at a health food store or something like that. I wanted to like really learn, and Chinese medicine seemed to be like the most robust and deep way of learning. But the thing I didn't know is you don't get licensed for Chinese herbs, you get licensed for acupuncture. And I had never had acupuncture before. So I went to get some acupuncture from a middle-aged white woman in New York City and an old Chinese guy in Chicago. And both of them were like remarkable experiences. I had some digestive stuff going on at that time as a late teen, early 20, and it didn't fix it right away. But having the sessions and having experiencing the needles being put in and laying there and resting, it was crystal clear that this is legit. I couldn't write a thesis about it back then. I didn't even really understand what was going on. But by the very visceral, subjective feelings that I had inside my body as I lay there with my eyes closed, I was like, oh my God, this is an intelligent process. And these needles are somehow communicating with each other and with my body and interacting in a way that I'd actually never experienced before. So like I said, even though those few sessions didn't heal my digestive symptoms of the time, it was really clear, and I was relieved. I was like, oh shit, thank God this acupuncture stuff isn't a scam. It feels like a real legitimate thing. And so that kind of opened that floodgate to like, okay, let's really look into this. And next surprise was it that it takes, the acupuncture is a master's degree and takes 4 years and etc. So there was a whole process to kind of go through to get that education, but well worth it.
Yeah. Okay. So on the note of kind of like acupuncture just being like some hippie woo-woo thing and like, will this actually work? And I feel like people don't take it. I was talking about this with my acupuncturist here in Atlanta yesterday, of like people just kind of don't take it seriously, right? Because it's not like seen as, I don't know, as like as much of a prestigious thing as being a doctor. Yet the reality is like the training is pretty much just as intense in terms of like you have to do a lot of years at university and whatnot. How are you, like, now that you actually understand acupuncture, how do you explain it to somebody that's like skeptical about it or needs to understand why do these little tiny needles do such amazing things to my body?
Okay. I mean, I can definitely relate to the first part of your question. Like when I graduated 20 years ago and started seeing patients, it was definitely a different landscape. People were still a bit skeptical. They still thought of what we do as a novelty or like a last ditch effort or like, a bucket list thing. I always wanted to try acupuncture, right? And here I am. Or my
bucket list thing. That is amazing.
And spouses would force their husbands to go, you need to go get acupuncture. And so there'd be like some sad poor guy turning up being like, I do not want to be here, but I need to get a session. So like it was different. And then I'd say probably like about 10 years ago, like about 10 years after I started practicing, I started noticing that it was like, people were looking at it a little bit differently. I was getting more referrals from medical doctors, a lot of referrals from IVF doctors. Like there was some great seminal research in the early 2000s showing that acupuncture greatly enhances the success rates of IVF and reproductive technology treatments. And so like we started to see people kind of embracing acupuncture in Chinese medicine as a more meaningful and mainstream option. Insurance covers it more now, but it's still like insurance is a problem all over the medical industry, so that's not necessarily the best thing. But but it is more accepted. People are more willing and likely to try acupuncture first or second and not last. People often come with some skepticism, and there's definitely people who come who are like really believe in acupuncture in an irrational way, and people who really don't believe in it in an irrational way, equally irrational. And I've definitely found that like the amount of belief or disbelief a person has, like their expectations, doesn't have a lot to do with how they respond. Like any medical treatment, like any intervention, there's a bit of a bell curve. There's people who are phenomenal responders at one end of the bell curve, and then there are people who aren't great responders to this technique, this modality. But most people are in the kind of the fat part of the bell curve, where there's a certain linearity and kind of a dose-related response. As they have a session, their symptom might improve. They have a few more sessions, and the symptoms improve even more. And sometimes I remind very skeptical people that most people in America, the generation before us, learned about acupuncture in Nixon's time. When he went to China, someone in his entourage had acute appendicitis, and they had an appendectomy, and it was with acupuncture anesthesia. So that's no drugs, no medication. That's literally just acupuncture and electrical stimulation. And they performed abdominal surgeries, heart surgeries, and brain surgeries with that. And it's generally considered almost as reliable as drug anesthesia. And certainly if someone has any inability to tolerate drugs or any liver or kidney issues, then that is in China still an option. We don't learn it or practice it.
Holy shit. Wait, I did not. That is incredible. I mean, I go into a fucking trance when I get acupuncture, so I guess it kind of makes sense. But wait, that's like amazing. That's a full thing in China that they do.
So there's no way that that's a placebo effect, right? Like they literally do open cavity surgeries with acupuncture only anesthesia. So that's like a small point that I reflect back to people who are like, this can't be real, this can't work. And then in terms of like that kind of in a more like grounded way for like the average user or consumer of acupuncture nowadays, I think because we learn about it from the perspective of Chinese medicine. Like when you go to school for acupuncture for 4 years, and I have a master's. My girlfriend Jackie, who you mentioned, is also an acupuncturist. She went on and has a PhD. She's a doctor of acupuncture. That wasn't available when I graduated, but it is now. So there's like very advanced studies or levels of study available to the acupuncturist. But like we still, whilst we're learning a lot of the Western medical and physiological, biological elements of why it works and what happens and how to diagnose, etc., we still learn a lot about the original ancient Asian philosophy perspective. And so that comes with terminology like qi and energy and yin and yang. And I think that stuff's important to know, to understand how they approached it and how they conceived of how the human body and mind exists in a time and space. But I think it can turn a lot of people off because it seems like a pretty wishy-washy and imprecise vocabulary. And so cutting to the chase, when someone asks me these days, like, well, how does it work? Like, does it balance my energy? And I honestly, I don't know about your energy, but I know for sure that every human being who is alive today is alive because they and their ancestors have survived and adapted to all kinds of environmental challenges and stressors and injuries, etc. We've evolved, we've survived, we've adapted. And every single little acupuncture needle that punctures your skin induces some sort of response. Like your body is like, holy fucking shit, I've just been attacked. I need to heal, adapt, survive, because the body's always looking for homeostasis, always looking for its best health, best balance. And part like getting a paper cut, your body's always going to try to heal. And the beauty of Chinese medicine is 5,000 years later, we have a guidance and a blueprint for like how to choose the points, the specific acupuncture points that will give this patient the most beneficial adaptive response at this time. And that's how I explain it now. And that makes a lot more sense to people than yin and yang.
Right. And like it helps them to understand like, okay, well, if the blood's going to this area, then I guess it's going to help heal this area. Can you explain briefly, Paul, so for people that don't understand, like how, for example, a spot on like your foot could be helping your liver, like you don't need to be, for example, putting needles in your liver to be helping your liver, like the whole thing of like reflexology.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, anywhere where you put a needle locally, like say at a sore ankle, like you said, you're going to slightly stimulate / injure that area. No collateral damage. Like it's not like falling off a bicycle or a bar fight or something, but like your body's going to be like, oh, geez, I need a response. So it sends circulation. It sends like a healing response locally to that site of quote unquote injury. But the fact that you can feel someone touching or tickling or needling you at your foot, at your knee, at your buttock, at your abdomen, it's because your nerves are wired to every nook and cranny of your body and they go to your brain. So there's always going to be a signal sent to your brain for a more centralized response. So there's that element, right? And then there's also like, there's elements of like, we know that like when someone comes into an emergency room with shoulder pain on the right side, they should also be checked for gallstones and gallbladder issues, because some nerves are kind of like exit ramps that go to 2 different neighborhoods or 3 neighborhoods off of the expressway. And so acupuncture, and I think through trial and error and intuition over thousands of years, they really kind of understood and got a good grasp of like which certain areas do influence other areas of the body.
I've always been amazed. Like, I feel like one of the things that helped me to understand that the body is like, you have to look at the body as a full body, right? Like when someone just goes to see like an endocrinologist, right? But the endocrinologist doesn't care about, what their mindset is doing, or they're not asking them about like their gut health. It's like, you aren't, when you're trying to heal your hormones, you can't just focus on your hormones because other things influence your hormones, right? And I'm always amazed when I go to acupuncture, how like, a needle might hurt. So I'll ask the acupuncturist, like, oh, like, what's that point? Because I'm always interested to know. And she'll tell me, and I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And it will be something like on my calf, right? But it's affecting like my stress, like it's related to like my stress levels or sleep or hormones or heat in my body or something like that. Yeah, I feel like acupuncture helps. I mean, what you were saying with like the different points and the nerve endings going to different neighborhoods off the same exit. I'm like, that's a really great example of just the body has to work as a full body, right? Like you're not just focused on one area. And I feel like acupuncture is very much about that.
I mean, like that's definitely a kind of a strength of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, that they have like in the vocabulary of how they understand the body, the framework is already in there to unite the mind and the body and the nervous system and the environment. And so like when you get to like the 3rd or 4th page, let alone the 2nd chapter of any Chinese medicine book, you'll see tons of charts that are kind of make like elucidating correlations between an organ and an emotion and a color and a flavor and a smell and a time of day and a time of year, etc. And because they felt that everything was connected. And medical anthropologists, they call Chinese medicine the medicine of systematic correspondences. Like everything, they felt their baseline, everything is connected. And it's the exception when it's not. Whereas I think in Western medicine, and I love Western medicine, I think I'm good at what I do with Chinese medicine because I appreciate and understand what's happening on the kind of a basic biological anatomical level. But I think one of the blind spots of Western medicine is that things are more easily separated. And the exception is that it might be connected, but they're often hesitant to make that claim or that assertion.
Right. Yeah, I agree so much with, Western medicine is great, but it's not necessarily going to fix the root problem, whereas something like acupuncture and other modalities definitely can. You briefly said it, but I want everyone to know this. Can you share with people how long acupuncture has been around? Like, for anyone that doesn't know, acupuncture existed before Western medicine existed. Like, this is the traditional kind of medicine. So when people are like, oh, I don't believe it, I'm like, it's not really a belief. Like, it's not like it's a faith, in my opinion. To me, the more that I've understood acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, I'm like, it is the original form of medicine. I feel like we've just been so brainwashed to think that the only medicine that works is like big pharma, going to the doctors, being handed a pill.
So I don't know the answer to that question. Like, we know that it's been around for thousands of years, and we know like the kind of evolution of how acupuncture kind of came around, and I mean the kind of the narratives that historians have made like look a little bit like originally it was like kind of a shaman type situation where like the practitioner was also the local crazy guy and also the local like spiritual guide kind of thing and high priest and what have or priestess perhaps and it was definitely like the overlap between superstition and religion and quasi science and chasing out the demons and all that, like that was all like smushed in there into this like dumpster fire of a pre-modern way of dealing with illness and disease and wellness, etc. And it would look like, you know, have you ever encountered moxibustion where we burn the herbs and we warm up the points, we stimulate the points with heat, and you can do this in a modern way with a heat lamp or even like a laser-like device. But in the old days, they would use it with something that looked like a cigar, and you would hold it close to a point and you would heat up that point and you stimulate the heat receptors. Well, in the old days, that shaman would literally like poke you with that hot ember and scare the demons out. Because in a pre-germ theory world, you know, illness was caused by evil spirits, but like now we know that it's virus and bacteria and etc. But they didn't have a label for that, so they tried to create a story for what was causing illness, and part of that, you know, that story was like you could scare them out of the body, you could chase them out. And then the early acupuncture instruments were like stones and bamboo and kind of sharp sticks, literally. And then in the Middle Ages, that refined into like what looked like scalpels and like chopsticks and kind of knife, like almost like surgical equipment. And then that refined into like what we call filiform needles, these ultra fine hair-like needles. And I sometimes when I think about it, I cannot believe that acupuncture is what it is today based on where it came from and how barbaric and obtuse it was in the old days, like thousands of years ago. It was a real, like, it was a hot mess.
Yeah, wow. But even besides like the, you know, crazy days of acupuncture or whatever they called it back then, like herbalism even has been around for a very long time. And for those that don't know, like Paul's company PKs is the herbs that I'm recommending. Although my Europeans and Australians will be like, they don't ship to Europe. I'm like, all right, I'll ask him. So here's the request.
We actually do ship to Europe.
Oh, is it a different website?
No, you just have to choose international shipping. We literally package to
okay. Well, there you go. For everybody, like ship it to Europe. Yay. Okay. Amazing. Great news.
But to your point, alongside the acupuncture, herbal medicine, which is basically like using what nature has to offer, has been used by every culture for all time. Like it's how humans have like survived on this harsh planet. And I mean, I think of herbs as being something between like foods and medications, like they're potent foods. Some of them are like tonics and adaptogens. They're good for most people most of the time, but some herbs are really strong and really intense, and they require like very precise knowledge on how to use them. And for what it's worth, like I think Indian Ayurveda has a very sophisticated system that evolved over thousands of years, and I think Chinese medicine has a very sophisticated system that evolved over thousands of years. And it's kind of amazing that it's still intact and people are getting more open to it. I think in response to maybe what you think of as some of the blind spots of Western medicine and pharmacological medicine.
So if you haven't seen, I have released a program called Empoweredly Submissive. And this is a fantabulous, yes, fantabulous, beginners kind of program into all of this work. So whether it is that you're wanting to dip your toes into the world of nervous system regulation and feminine energy and, stepping into your boundaries and self-confidence and self-trust, there is something in this program for you. It is an elevated, luxurious, beautiful program. The energy the energy in it is obviously immaculate, but more importantly, what I actually deliver to you guys and some of the tools and the strategies and the modalities that I share with you are amazing. Now, I'm going to be transparent. It's a $149 program. It's fucking amazing. You get great value. Is it going to heal all of your trauma? Absolutely not. Would it be ethical for me to give you a pre-recorded program that is a beginner's program that sends you deep into healing your trauma cycles? No, that would not be ethical. So if you want to do really deep somatic work, that is where Queen Alchemy or my immersion is absolutely the best place for you. And it is a safe place for you where you are going to be held and led properly. But that's not to say that Empoweredly Submissive isn't a great stepping stone. For many of you, you have found Empoweredly Submissive to be a really good starting point and to also just dip your toes into what it's like doing a program of mine to kind of get a little bit of an idea of what happens once you join a program. So if you haven't joined Empoweredly Submissive and you feel like that could be a great starting place for you, all the modules, the outline, what you'll get out of it, who it's for, etc., is on the website page, and you can just click the link below in the podcast episode. All right, let's get back into the show. Yeah. Okay. On the note of herbs, what are some of your favorite herbs, Paul, that it's safe for the average person to be using?
Probably my favorite all-time single herb is saffron. I just love it. It's like the royal goddess relative to turmeric. They're both very yellow and bright. They have these natural antioxidizing pigments found in them. They have a lot of overlap with their functionality, and most people at this point know what turmeric is and that it has many health benefits. But I think saffron is kind of like, it's just this next level herb. It's incredible. It's delicious and smoky. You can put it into your water. You can put it in a martini. Saffron is.
Of course, you were like, you can put it into a martini. Okay, what are the benefits besides like anti-inflammatory benefits? Are there any other benefits of saffron?
So it improves serotonin levels, so it's great for mind and mood thinking. It microcirculation, so promotes circulation. Some of its microcirculation promoting properties also are great for reducing scar tissue and fibrosis. That leads to cancer effects. There's some antihistamine and anti-allergy effects. There's some metabolic benefits to saffron, thinking metabolism, weight loss, etc. I mean, it's an incredibly diverse herb.
Wow, amazing. Okay, cool. So going back to when you were talking about you've had a lot of success and a lot of referrals from like IVF doctors and doctors. Let's talk briefly, and then I want to talk about men's health as well, because they often get forgotten, about women's health and fertility. And a lot of my audience is very much into, now that I'm pregnant, everyone's like, oh, I want all the conception things, all the pregnancy things. So can you share how, just briefly, how acupuncture helps with fertility? I know there's a lot of research that's come out, which is amazing as well. So like finally people are also taking it seriously. And let's start with there. Like, how does acupuncture help with people not doing IVF? So just like fertility in general and hormone balance, and then maybe also why it then helps with IVF.
Okay. So, starting with the IVF, because I think that research really got acupuncture on the map in terms of fertility support, or legitimate fertility support. And they were able to demonstrate that when you add a couple of acupuncture treatments on the day of the IVF transfer, you can almost double the success rate in terms of live birth. So, in terms of public health policy and economics, you add $200, $300, $400 worth of acupuncture insurance policy to a $20,000 medical procedure, and you can close to double the success rate. That's like mind-boggling. And in terms of why IVF doctors and clinics have really taken to it, their careers are all about numbers. They like the success rates, right? And so anything that can move that needle even a little bit is considered great. And acupuncture is very safe. It's not expensive. There's close to zero side effects. It's really a no-brainer. And then the other part of your question, outside of assisted reproductive therapies and IVF and IUIs, etc., acupuncture is phenomenal for functional disorders. So what that means is there might not be a tumor or an infection or a blockage, a tear, a problem. Like there might not be a measurable, actionable problem according to Western medicine. And a lot of women with infertility or subpar fertility hit that wall. They're like, the doctor can't find anything really wrong with me. but my periods are irregular, or I'm absent with periods, or I can't get pregnant, or I can't stay pregnant. And the one really interesting thing about Chinese medicine, and this comes back to what I said a little bit earlier, the vocabulary and the nomenclature that we use to think about the body, it helps, but we don't need an exact Western medical diagnosis, because we're asking 100 questions about your sleep and your pee and your poo and your skin and your mucus. We're looking at your tongue, which gives us a lot of information about what's going on inside your body. We take your pulse, and we're not counting how many beats per minute the pulse is. We're feeling very subtle intricacies in the difference of the tension of the pulse and the blood vessels, etc. That gives us more like an illustration about the weather patterns or the climate in your body. And we start to the Chinese medicine lets us start to tease that apart, like unravel the problem one strand at a time. And for instance, whether you have headaches or back pain or fertility issues or digestive issues, we deal with that and we address it, but where just as much effort is being put into trying to balance the underlying physiological disharmonies, the functional irregularities, etc. And coming to fertility from that point of view is really phenomenal, because firstly, women's reproductive systems, why women are given most of the interventions at an IVF clinic is because you have the more moving parts. You have more accessible points of enhancement and intervention to improve outcomes. And acupuncture is also a great way to try to enhance those, like move the needle, pun intended, where you can to optimize the outcome.
So then what about for men? How can acupuncture help men when it comes to fertility and then also just overall health?
Okay. So in general, in Chinese medicine, I'd say the unifying factor that I see clinically is herbs. So I definitely have seen huge improvements in female fertility with herbs, but also with male fertility as well. Speaking of PKs, I literally have one formula called Let's Make a Baby for Women, which is a very good, safe, gentle, general fertility boosting formula for women. And then I have one called Let's Make a Baby for Men, and it works. It's different ingredients, different formulation, but it works to support male fertility factors. And similarly, but there's not as many actionable intervals in the male fertility cycle, but we work on boosting immunity, detoxifying, improving circulation, and for men, making sure sex function is appropriate and up to the task of making babies.
Yeah. I feel like men are so often forgotten, and it's like, no, like their oxidative damage matters, their inflammation matters, their circulation matters. Like, and even just like, I mean, sometimes I just feel like with even Hal having gone to see Jackie, like early on when we started dating, it just, I feel like allowed him to get more in touch with his body as well, in terms of just like, okay, it's not always like on the woman when it comes to making babies, or just because I look healthy doesn't mean I am healthy. And I always find it so interesting when I'm in acupuncture, when I feel the certain things. Like I remember after my New York immersion, I came to Jackie and did a session, and never in my life have I felt so much pain with all the liver points. Never. And I like don't drink. Like she was like, this is so weird, but it was all the emotion that I was carrying from everybody else from 3 days of, trauma healing at my event. And so I went to her, and even that just was like, I'd been doing acupuncture for a million years at that point, but it never ceases to amaze me how much the body can hold. Even when you're like, I feel fine, like nothing's wrong. Then you go to acupuncture and it's like, you feel it. Like you feel how much you're holding on to, or you feel how different you feel afterwards. And then you're like, oh wow. So I thought that I felt okay, but actually I felt shit. It's like when people don't realize they're bloated, and then they don't feel bloated anymore. And they're like, wait, I've been bloated for 5 years of my life. I'm like, yeah, we normalize feeling shit.
I think the thing you just said kind of hits the nail on the head a little bit. Like literally the bread and butter for how, because not everyone comes in with a lab or a result from the Western medicine side of their healthcare, and that we're looking for an objective response. Obviously, having a baby is an objective response, but like for a lot of people, like they're coming in and they kind of like they have a sense that something's not quite right in their body, or like they don't feel well, but they don't know how badly they felt until they feel the juxtaposition of how well they feel after 1 or 3 or 5 acupuncture sessions. And like that's the kind of the proof in the pudding for a lot of people. That like, and probably similar to what I felt with my first few acupuncture sessions. a regular patient coming in off the street or a referral from a friend might not have the vocabulary or the insight to be very specific about describing what they feel, but intuitively and viscerally in real time, they feel so different that they can't argue with that. Like that becomes the thing that converts them to being a believer.
Yeah. And I think just for a lot of people, like this whole conversation and just what we're saying right now, like it's always a reminder you don't need to be sick to go and, get acupuncture or go and get help in any way, shape, or form, right? Like I go to acupuncture now, not because something's wrong with me, but I go there so I don't get sick. I go there now as more preventative measures than because something is actually wrong. And even just like, now obviously not living in New York. And honestly, the worst thing about that is not having Jackie, Paul's girlfriend, as my acupuncturist. But anyway, now every time I go there, she has commented like, oh my God, the difference in your body like is so like she can feel it in the acupuncture sessions because of how regularly I go in Atlanta. And prior to finding my Atlanta acupuncturist, I would go like a month without acupuncture. And then I would go back to New York and then I would see Jackie. And it was like, we were like trying to keep my body's head afloat in the sense, right? Now, when I go back, it's like we could almost like surpass just getting me to baseline, for example. It's like we can then get my body to like really good health. Like I'm trying to give an image to people of like, you don't always need to just be getting yourself to a place of, okay, I feel good, that's enough. What if you got yourself to a place where you're past feeling good? And it's like you then can feel amazing because you're not waiting to feel sick to work on yourself or take the herbs or whatever.
Yeah, that preventative element and the wellness element is a huge factor. And it's actually also a strength of Chinese medicine because, like I said, we don't need a specific disease diagnosis to make a positive impact, or positive stimulations on a patient's kind of body and physiology and well-being. And I think, do you remember like when the pandemic first hit and a lot of people in America had been living with a kind of an acceptance of what an okay level of well-being or chronic illness or chronic inflammation was, and people were kind of accepting that. And then the pandemic came and it was very much like, oh my God, people with underlying health conditions, inflammatory conditions, chronic conditions were really, really decimated by COVID because it was very unforgiving in terms of people who weren't in good health or had a lot of toxicity in their bodies. And I think that actually that moved the needle in terms of people dealing with whether it's their blood sugar or their blood pressure or their cholesterol, their weight, etc. Like that, I think
Yeah.
that the silver lining to the pandemic was it really recalibrated a lot of people's perception about what's an acceptable baseline. And to your point, a beautiful thing about going for regular wellness sessions and feeling better and better, like people start to really kind of curate and create the kind of life and well-being and body that they want because they have the resources and the bandwidth to do it because they're not putting out fires every few weeks of symptoms and illnesses and issues coming up.
Seriously, when I have to fill out forms and it's like, who's your GP? Like your general practitioner. I'm like, I don't have a doctor, not because I'm like anti-doctor or anything, but it's like, well, I don't go to the doctor. And if I was to get sick, I actually go to my acupuncturist when I get sick or when I'm coming down with something, because I know that like that actually fixes it. And for me, that just feels better than going to a doctor because I just get, I don't even know what I would get told because I haven't been in so long. So I just like don't even go. But it's like, I'll go to the doctor if it's like, I know that I am like so sick that I need antibiotics. But otherwise, what can the doctor do? The doctor isn't going to tell me anything preventative. But if I go to the acupuncturist, they're actually going to nip whatever I'm feeling in the bud. Something that I did want to ask you though, Paul, is like you said at the beginning, traditional Chinese medicine like isn't just acupuncture. There's other, parts of what traditional Chinese medicine is. Can you share some of the other parts? Like I'm thinking, maybe explaining like if your body's too hot, too cold, like dampness, and then how people like on the back of that, how people can just start to incorporate more of some of the TCM principles in their life. For example, not drinking water with ice in it. Like Americans and their fucking iced lattes. I don't know what it is. Every time I go to a bar, right, and I ask for water, it's like the glass is all ice. I'm like, this isn't water. Like it's freezing. I'm like, no ice. And they're like, no ice, not even a little bit. I'm like, no ice. I'm like, I'm the weirdo apparently.
Okay, so I mean, I think like, and this kind of goes a little bit to that conversation about qi and energy and yin and yang. I think it's important to kind of remember that Chinese medicine was developed over a long period of time, and prior to the modern scientific mathematical vocabulary that we have now, that kind of describes and defines a modern world, medicine, scientific, etc. And so in Chinese medicine, they use the terminology, the same terminology that they use to describe the natural world around them, they use to describe the body. And so, like, some the points of the body have names that sound like they're coming from pastoral poetry, like referring to mountain peaks and valleys and streams and things like this. And so, term like in Chinese medicine, like they would look around and say, like, okay, we have summer, it's hot, we have winter, it's cold, etc. And so we have these opposing forces that kind of are at play in the body. These can be in harmony or out of harmony, but basically they felt that there were these treasures in the body, and these treasures are like the chi, the energy, the vitality. It's kind of what animates all our actions and our thoughts and feelings and our ability to move, and not only on a gross level of our arms and legs and faces, but also with the glands and tissues inside. Yin, that translates as like substances and fluids and structures. And your yang is like the warmth and the fire of life. So yin and yang must be united. You don't only need a physiological, physical body, but you need life force that keeps that body warm and animated. And interestingly, but this also goes to some of the vagueness of these concepts. Like the character for yin originally describes the shady side of a mountain, right? So imagine you're sitting or laying down on the shady side of the mountain. It's colder, it's wetter, it's damp, the rocks are cold on your tush, right? And so, like, that's the vibe. Like, you probably want to put a cover on and kind of curl up, versus the character for yang, it derives from the sunny side of the mountain. So imagine you're on the side of a mountain with the sun blazing down on it. It's hot, it's dry, it's dusty, you feel parched, etc. You want to spread out and relax and be open, right? So that kind of like these inferred concepts relative to yin and yang. And the character for chi is kind of like the steam rising off of a pot of cooking rice. So you walk into a room and you smell that smell of cooking rice, like this essence. You can't grab it, but you know it's going to energize.
Fuck, now I want like butter chicken with rice.
So anyway, so like you see how like these concepts are powerful,
Yeah.
images, but like they're kind of like there's very little consensus when like you say yin and yang and I say yin and yang, or Jackie or Hal, we're all thinking of slightly different things, which is actually a strength and a weakness of that kind of traditional vocabulary. And so then that leads to things like you mentioned, dampness, when a person has edema and fluid retention, or they're congested and phlegmatic and mucousy. Well, the Chinese call that dampness. It's a swamp-like environment, right? And if they're like hot flashes and night sweats and they're withered and dried and they feel like constantly dehydrated, they'll call that yin deficiency. And maybe yin deficiency with a little fire, not enough substance, too much activity, too much fire. The chi energy can either be depleted and you could be chi deficient and exhausted, or it can be stagnant. You can be all pent up and blocked up and stuck. And so these are some of the images and concepts, but the meaningful part of all of that isn't the concepts themselves, but all the acupuncture points and all the herbs are also described and categorized with the same vocabulary. So the strength of a Chinese medicine practitioner is being able to identify, okay, Monica's coming in and she's saying she feels A, B, C, and D. That means chi deficiency, dampness, and excessive yang energy blazing through her. All the herbs, all the acupuncture points can be chosen by herbs that balance those things, transforming dampness, calming down and anchoring the yang, nourishing the yin, etc. And so that's how we treat.
Guys, I cannot believe it. We are about to go into our 7th year of running Queen Alchemy. I started this program in 2019. I've done over, I think, 25 now, or 20, 25 or 24 or 26, one of those numbers, a lot. I have done about 25 rounds of this program. It used to be called something else, so hence like this is technically the 15th round of Queen Alchemy. But when I tell you this program is unlike anything else you will find out there. I'm not just saying it. Yes, I'm biased because like it's my program, but just think about it in terms of this program has been running for this long successfully because it works. I mean, look at the testimonials. We have so many testimonials that it slows down the website page. So you have to go to another website page, like it's on a blog, to see more testimonials. And that's across the board. There's a bunch of one-on-ones in there as well. But truly what Queen Alchemy is Queen Alchemy is the program that is going to heal your trauma so that you can feel safe to be in your feminine in everything that encompasses. In Queen Alchemy, we are not doing surface level work. What I'm actually taking you through is my MYH, Monica Yates Health Trauma Healing Method. And it is a method that I have developed, and I've actually explained it in a few emails going out that we have through this launch as well. I have developed this over all of the years of doing this work, and it really is what has taken all of my clients to the places where they are now, and then them continuing to have that snowball effect where we get the emails 5 years after they worked with me and they're like, Queen Alchemy still is the thing that got me to this place in my life. So ladies, this is my official invitation for you to join this round of Queen Alchemy. It is the last round before I am a mother. It is also the last round before I am a published author. And I just think to myself, how could life change when these things happen? You know, we are planning ahead, but we also just don't know what's in store. So if you have been thinking about doing Queen Alchemy for multiple years or months, my biggest piece of advice is do not wait. If you heard some of the women talking about Queen Alchemy on the roundtable episode that I recently released, you would have heard that one of the biggest things that they all agreed on is they wish they did it sooner and to not wait. So don't keep waiting. Don't keep procrastinating on it. Do it now. Well, and one of the questions I was going to ask you that I know I mentioned at the beginning, and I get asked this question all the time because I'm constantly raving about the difference between, or constantly saying there's a big difference in my opinion between a really good acupuncturist and an okay acupuncturist. I've done acupuncture since I was oh my gosh, maybe 18 years old at this point. So a long time. And I would only say in the last kind of 5 years have I been super religious about it. But I have been to so many acupuncturists where it's I really know, at least for me, what I need to classify as a good acupuncturist. And then I'm okay, this is mediocre. And one of the biggest things for me that I've learned, and then I would like to know any recommendations that you have, Paul, for helping people to determine, what a good acupuncturist is versus you're going to a mediocre one, try and find somebody else. For me, it's the ability for someone to just tell me exactly what to do based off my symptoms, right? So being able to look at my tongue, tell me I need to be eating more of this, less of this, take these herbs, doing these points, blah, 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 just by telling them how I'm feeling versus going to another acupuncturist where I'm telling them that. And they're oh yeah, I'm not really sure. Or they tell me just some random thing where I know, but I mean, I also know a lot about acupuncture, more than the average person, where I'm shit answer. Cause even right now, I've never in my life, obviously I'm pregnant, so that's why, but I have been craving cold things, and I am super live by TCM, warm food, warmness. And I still am eating warm foods and I still sometimes want that. But I'm so fucking thirsty all the time. I constantly feel dehydrated. Come the afternoon, I'm I want all the ice in my water. And as I was saying before, I've never been like that. And so it's so important for me to be able to bring those things to an acupuncturist and then be able to explain to me why that's happening and that it's either okay, or this is what we need to balance, or blah, 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 blah. So all that to say, how do you know the difference between a really good acupuncturist like yourself and Jackie, and then a mediocre acupuncturist where it's worth, maybe not necessarily, they're not bad per se, but it's worth that person going and trying out some other acupuncturists so that they can just see what else is out there?
You're basically talking about the difference between acupuncture and wacupuncture.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly it.
Okay. So on the one hand, what you described is basically someone who has a high level of professional expertise, right? Someone who can encounter all kinds of different patients and have a meaningful, beneficial, and significant impact on their health, whether it's through the treatment or the dietary advice or herbal advice, etc. So there's that aspect to it. There's so many layers to your question here. Part of it is also training. A person an acupuncturist should have had a full, at least master's level, hopefully even doctor level of training in acupuncture, and that really brings them up to the same level as a medical doctor. There's like people do dry needling and certified acupuncture, medical acupuncture, and so there's some legal loopholes that let other medical practitioners do like a 3-month course or a 6-month correspondence course to become like basically adept at the basic principles of acupuncture. But I'd say to have a phenomenal acupuncture experience, you want someone who has devoted their life to it, who's not just a primary care doctor who got sick of doing primary care and wanted to branch out into functional medicine and some dry needling on the weekends. So that's a huge factor. And
Okay.
but it's important. And
it's true. Yeah, it is really true, because I feel like that, I mean, if you don't know the profession like you do, it's like, well, then how do you know what to look for? So that's really helpful.
So like adequate training is one. And then an answer I often give my patients is like-minded people. So if you have a friend or a relative or a coworker who you feel like you're on a similar page in terms of the expectations in life and philosophy and etc., and they've come back and raved to you about a practitioner that they've seen, there's a good chance that you also click with that person. Right? So like-minded people will resonate with and enjoy similar things. I think that's it.
Yeah, I feel like that's great. Okay, amazing. So to wrap up, what could somebody be doing besides going and seeing an acupuncturist? What are some little things that people can be doing that for the most part, it supports them bringing their body back into homeostasis? Because obviously everybody's different with like, are they too hot? Are they too cold? Are they dry? Are they damp? Whatever. But what are some things that overall you recommend to your patients and other people? Like don't put ice in your water, for example, or whatever it is that helps most people to come back into balance.
I mean, to your example, like to be kind of cognizant and sensitive to the fact that your homeostasis and your well-being is a moving target. And for instance, you're pregnant now, and so you've noticed there's a change, right? And so whilst you might not be doing ice cold plunges and drinking only ice water, it probably makes sense for you to drink like more fluids, cooler fluids, and recognize that your body is now turned into a manufacturing furnace. Right?
So hot all the time. Like, what is happening? But I will say, like, and to everybody listening, the fact that I've done acupuncture and just my connection to my body, it's meant that through these changes, I'm trusting them and I'm listening to them, because I don't think that it's fair to ever, like, it's not like our body isn't a textbook, right? And even during pregnancy, it's like, it isn't just black and white. So even though it's good for me to be eating all the slow cooked foods and like the broths and blah, 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 I'm also trusting my body in the fact of if I don't want that and I'm craving a cold salad, then obviously there's something in the cold salad for me that's bringing balance. And I can trust that because of how intuitive I am with my body.
Yeah, for sure. Take it all with a grain of salt, and everyone's a little bit different. And I think like one of the places that people, and to your question, like what should everyone do? Like everyone's a little bit different. And so there's not really a single recipe for everyone, but thinking about the people that I see here in New York regularly, get more sleep, eat regularly, drink more water, like take less caffeine, exercise more, like the very basic things that might seem too simplistic. And then once a person has those basics done, visit PK's Herbs, take the quiz.
Yes.
Let these resources to enhance your health with botanicals, adaptogens, energizing, immune boosting herbs. Like I think you often like good foods and then extending to good herbs are a great way to enhance wellness in between acupuncture sessions and maintain goals when you can't see your acupuncturist as regularly. The things that you put in every day make a huge difference overall.
Paul, this has been so amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I know you were like the busiest man in the world. Like you need to go and get your own acupuncture session because you're always running around giving to everybody else. So thank you so much for giving me and giving everybody an hour of your time, because we're really grateful. And you just gave so much value. And I know that this episode has been like needed for a very long time, because I'm constantly just getting asked acupuncture recommendations because I'm always talking about it. So now we have an amazing resource, and everybody needs to seriously visit PK's. I have a discount code on my favorite products page, so you can go there. I've listed out my favorite ones as well. But you guys have a quiz on the page, so you can take the quiz to then find out what herbs are the best. And everyone needs to just start doing acupuncture. And if you live in New York, go see Paul or go see Jackie. But don't see Jackie too often because I need her to have space when I go to see her. Everybody wants my recommendations all the time. I'm like, well, I can't tell everybody because then I'm not going to be able to get into her.
It really happens.
It really does happen. Now when I'm in New York, I'm like, oh, I'm here. Can I see you? And she's too busy. I'm like, what the actual fuck? I'm like, have I sent you too many people? Anyway, thank you so much, Paul. Is there anything else that you quickly want to share with people about acupuncture or herbs?
No, this has been great. It's been great chatting with you, and congrats, and wishing
thank you. Thank you. All right, Paul, I'll let you go. Have a lovely rest of your day. We'll see you in New York when we're there, and I'll let you know when the episode comes out, but just thank you so much for your time because I know you're really busy.
All right.
Bye, Paul. Bye. All right, guys, that was such an amazing episode. Like, wow, I hope that you loved that. He is just a world of knowledge. So thank you so much, Paul, for coming on. He is an extremely busy man. Like, his calendar of clients is ridiculous. And also some of his clients that he has are amazing. We're talking like a big celebrities. So I'm like, oh, vibes. He came on the podcast. But he is just truly the most amazing man and the most talented man when it comes to acupuncture. So I hope that you guys learned a lot. Please, please, please make sure that you tag him and I in your Instagram stories so that you can share the message of acupuncture, and also so that we can just let him know that we really appreciate him coming on the podcast because he truly is incredibly busy. He's got a lot going on. He's also got a family. He's running his own business. There's a lot. He lives in New York City, as you could hear by the fire engines and all of the police cars and everything in the background. So yeah. All right. I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. And that's it. Have a good rest of your day.